Hey everyone, my name is David Dunbar, or the Theme Park Evangelist. I know it's been at least a week or two since my last YouTube video, so unfortunately I'm going to have to upload this at my college pastor's house. We do have a internet router hooked up finally. I'm going to try to explain everything as quickly as possible so that you're understanding where I am. Unfortunately, it's still not officially connected to the internet because I can't even find it on my Wi-Fi or my closest Wi-Fi networks or whatever. So you're probably like, "What are you talking about?" So yeah, that was kind of my bad. I started like plunging right in. I'm like, "Oops," not even explain myself. So about a month ago, I had done a YouTube video on I'm moving out of my parents' house. Unfortunately, my brother made me delete it because it was too much personal information. So, to protect our personal information, I'm going to do a quick 2 minute or so video explaining what's going on, and then I'm going to go right into a really cool discussion on how the coronavirus has affected me personally and how I got how should I put this and how my trip to Walt Disney World and all that good stuff back in late February of this year was honestly more of a big deal than I ever anticipated upon it being. So just hang on tight. So yeah, I was living with my parents in another city in another house up until about a few weeks ago. And it's funny. I had been living in Florida. My parents came to me and they said, "Hey, we're going to move to Kentucky. Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't have to. And so this was basically the last time I was going to get to live with them. Now here comes the funny thing. This was, not something I was forced into moving out of my parents' house. In fact, this was another one of those things that I had to make a tough decision, sacrifice basically for my brother. So basically, I'm living with my parents, and we came to the end of our lease because it was a rental house we were living in because we couldn't afford to buy a house just yet, and my parents finally had the money, to buy a house. That's the best way to put it. So my parents took all their stuff out the rental house we were living in, and they bought a house not too far from where I work, and not too far from where I'm currently living either. Almost like we planned it that way, you would think, which is hilarious. Which we didn't. That's the even funnier part. And then we had originally looked at renting a house not too far from where we're currently living. Unfortunately, things didn't work out, but we found another one further away from where I was currently living, but closer to where some of these guys that I know, more so my brother, where they were currently living, I should say. So it ended up benefiting them more, and also is benefiting me more because of the fact that where we're living right now is a lot closer to my church, it's a lot closer to my work. It's also on a better side of the town, I guess you could put it. So yeah, in the long run, this ended up being a lot better, and I'm going a lot longer than 2 minutes, and I apologize. So yeah, it is what it is. So the reason why I got put into this situation is because when originally my parents came to me about this whole move, they had said, "Well, we want you to come with us," but the problem was it was only a 2 bedroom condo. My brother would have been homeless, so my brother spent quite a bit of time looking for someone to stay with, and it just wasn't working. And I said, "Well, what if we did some kind of thing where all of us lived together?" And my brother talked to his coworkers about it. Now, at first they were, well, I shouldn't say talk to his coworkers because that's too much personal information. So I should say, so my brother talked to the guys that we were going to move in with about it. And, one of them was like, oh, yeah, let's do it. And the other guy was like, he was a little more on the fence about it. So when it all came said and done, basically, um, we finally decided this is what we're going to do. If it meant giving my brother a place to live, I was all for it. And my brother had to have a big enough space to put all this crap, and that was basically the biggest problem. Is more or less the fact that my brother had so much stuff, and the fact that my brother had to have somewhere to stay. And I almost was tempted just to move off with him just to give him somewhere to live, because I was not about to see my brother being homeless. There was no way. And I did have another option, even if it meant me being homeless, which honestly, that's not going to happen, because I have TJ down in Central Florida still, who's like, yeah, sure, I'll take you back, or I'll take you, we can live together. But the idea of me living in Florida again, I don't know. I'm still on the fence about being in Florida again, unless I'm like on vacation or something. But I don't know. I've got a lot of I guess you could say, issues that I had in the past few years just living in Florida, and I could not see myself living in Florida anytime soon. And I'm praying and hoping that TJ will make the right decision if it comes down to it, whether he wants to move up here or if he wants to stay in Florida. Because if he does end up moving up here, I really feel like he would have a much better job than where he's at, and I can stay where I'm at, and we can have each other again. I can get him away from certain people that are not that much of a friend to him. I'm not mentioning names because it's too private, and also the fact that it's kind of rude. But hopefully this super long video, or at least this first portion of it, will help you guys understand how things end up working out the way they are now, and why I'm living in a different city. I'm not mentioning the city I'm living in, but that's besides the point. And also why I'm no longer living with my parents. But hey, this is something I've been needing for a while now. I do need to be away from my parents, because we've been batting head, or whatever you call it. We've just not been seeing eye to eye lately. I guess it's the best way to put it, especially my dad and I. Unfortunately, my dad and I tend to argue quite a bit. And I've been told before by somebody that the day that he or she moved out of their dad's house, they started getting along a lot better. And unfortunately, due to the fact that I'm autistic, it makes it a lot tougher, Anyway, so let's get into the coronavirus discussion. So, as you guys know, the whole pandemic thing actually started back in January. And I even heard stuff about, people knowing about the pandemic as of late last year, like Christmas time last year. So, it was like about early January of this year. There was first, the whole Passion 2020 thing. So, I was really excited. It's a brand new decade. I got to watch Passion 2020. It was my, first official full year that I was going to be living in Kentucky. I'm like, yeah, I'm excited, I'm not living in Florida this year. Because last year I lived half of the year in Florida and half of the year in Kentucky. This was my first year I was going to be officially living in Kentucky. I also was going to be with Meyer for over a year if I stayed with them, or I was at least going to try to get into Answers in Genesis. I really had a feeling that I was going to get into Answers in Genesis this year. I was also going to go down to Florida and visit my friends again. I didn't actually know at the time when I was going to go. That whole trip, well, you'll find out why it worked out the way it did. So, there was, a lot going on. So, when I first started out January, it was a very boring, slow month. We're going to call it the proverbial calm before the storm. Let's just go with that. So, I'm at Meyer and I'm working, and it was so slow. And, this is not necessarily a bad thing either. I remember all of us were kind of bored and there was nothing going on. There was so much clearance stuff going on. Like, that was pretty much the highlight of the month, was people were getting clearance stuff. January was a very long month, and I thought August was a long month, but January was worse by a long shot. And March was probably another one that was like way up there for sure. I would say January still is on the top for being the longest month of the year. March would be second, August would be third for me. So, it's all depends on how you look at it. So, normally I would not say January is one of the longest months, but this year it was. It was just that boring. And, the one highlight I had in the month of January, besides passion, was I got to meet my good friend Danny. We did meet officially at the Ark Encounter. I showed her around the entire thing, and we went out to Dry Ridge, and we had lunch out there. Now, just to give you guys an idea, I don't live anywhere near Dry Ridge. I live in a completely different part of Kentucky, but even at the time, I still don't want to tell you guys where I live, because I don't want people coming giving me death threats, especially for some stuff that I've said on Facebook where I was trying to protect a friend, and people have taken it the wrong way and taken my protection as threats, and they've actually threatened me, even though I was not the one that was being a threat and stuff like that. And it's hard being a Christian sometimes just because of that, but it's even harder being autistic. People say it's hard being a Christian, but it's actually harder being autistic in a lot of ways. As strange as that is, I guess is the best way to put it. So, yeah, I did meet with that friend. It went so well that we did go to the Creation Museum for a second time, but I still had to wait like a whole month. Now, it was a very long wait to meet her again, or to see her again anyway. Especially considering the only way I had of talking to her was over Messenger for an entire month. I had no way of seeing her otherwise. I didn't even know about Jungle Gyms at the time. Keep this in mind. That was another cool thing I did this year. But so it was like, okay, when am I going to go see her? And she didn't know I didn't know anything about Jungle Gyms either. Otherwise, I might have been able to see her. And I was actually in love with her at the time. So I spent a lot of time like daydreaming about her and stuff like that. And, she went down to Florida at the end of the end of January, that is. Sorry. I really need to adjust my hand there. Okay, I'm good now. But yeah, I went down to, she went down to Florida at the end of January. She flew with Delta, and the funny thing is, I flew basically exactly a month later, if not exactly a month from the time that she flew. And she did some things that were a little different than I did, but everybody has their own vacations. And she came back, and I did talk to her all about it. In fact, she said, "Oh, I'm going to tell you all about my trip when I see you again in person." I'm like, okay, great, and we did the whole Creation Museum, and this time we went out for lunch out near Kings Island, and we went to a pub, which I thought was like, okay, this is different, but as I've gotten to know her better, I can understand why she made that decision. So, we went out for a lunch, and I got to talk to her, especially about her trip, and it was one of the best times I have with her. In fact, at this point, I really definitely felt something there. And then all of a sudden, I got a message from her like a few days later saying, she needed a social media break, which ended up turning into 3 months long. I didn't actually know she was being completely serious at the time, which is the funny thing. I thought that, she was using it as an excuse to end things with me, but I didn't realize there was more to it than I thought there was. And I ended up looking like a complete idiot. In fact, I'm actually really upset with how I handled a lot of things because of the fact that I basically made a lot of bad decisions. And sure, she did some things that were a little unusual, maybe even wrong, but I guess the best way to put it is she's also got a disability of some sort, like I do. And when you've got disabilities, you don't, always think things through. And that's why I get a little frustrated with my parents. This is another reason why we don't always get along because, my parents are constantly getting frustrated with me because of the fact that I make some decisions that they don't completely understand. And, for people who claim to have taken all these different classes on working with people with disabilities, they should be able to understand her too, but apparently they don't. And because I have disabilities, I completely, or at least for the most part, understand people with disabilities, even when they're like a lot worse than myself, because I understand what it's like to not be completely there. And that's why I've been working on a book. Unfortunately, that book is harder to work on without internet. It is on my computer now, but until I get my internet going, or until I get internet going again, I can't really work on it. It is saved on my dad's computer still, but I don't go over to my mom and dad's house as much, and I'm not just gonna go over there and say I'm gonna go use your computer and just hide for like a few hours. That's kind of wrong. Besides, they're still in the process of getting stuff settled in, so yeah. Excuse me, I wouldn't be able to do it anyway. I might be able to in a month if I came over in the middle of the day, like on a Monday or something, if they were at work, because I have a key anyway, then that would be different. But that's besides the point. I should have worked on it more when I had access to the computer, but I was like, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. It's so easy to say that, isn't it? But yeah, you're probably thinking, are you rambling more about your life, Dave? Or are you gonna get into the coronavirus? Oh, trust me, it's like right now. So, right after this, whole thing happened with my good friend and I, I thought to myself, well, at this point, it doesn't matter anymore. I've got to go down to Florida literally within the next few weeks anyway. Thought I heard someone. Gotta check. Nah, there ain't nobody here. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna check the time too because I need to leave soon. I still got time. But yeah, I literally pretty much got to the end of my trip. And, well, not near the end of my trip. There, I got to, like, my trip, and I was just, thinking to myself, well, whether she messages me or not, at this point, it doesn't matter. I gotta do my trip, and I'm gonna try to enjoy it. In some ways, I wish I hadn't been so focused on her, because I would have enjoyed my trip a lot more, especially considering what ended up happening after, the trip. And I still cannot believe, how anything can happen so quickly in such a short time period. And the funny thing is, when I first got to the airport, and this just proves how things can just change so quickly. So think about it. When I went to the airport on February 23rd, 2020, which is exactly a month after my friend did, there was no face masks. There was no social distancing. there was, none of that whole 6 feet apart crap or anything like that. I was able to sit, right next to somebody. That person could have had COVID 19. I had known about COVID 19 since January. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, I'll never get to it, so I was wrong. It hadn't even, really got into United States of America just yet. Like, I think it had gotten into New York at this point, but, I wasn't too worried. I was like, oh, it's just in New York. It's, not a big deal. I was surprised it even got that far. But I was still not worried about it. And I know that it's not a good thing to say something like that, but it's just one of those things, I try to take things as they come, and sometimes I wish I could go back to my younger self and just say, brace yourself, just be prepared for whatever is coming at you. Just the whole entire week, there was moments when I was just like really, really enjoying myself, and there's some moments when things were going wrong, and I was like, man, I wish I was home right now. I wish I was at work making money, and some ways I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, don't worry about what's going on in Kentucky. Don't worry about what's going on with your parents. Don't worry about any of that. Just focus on here and now. Enjoy your trip. Don't worry about spending the money. And I wish I could really just tell myself to, enjoy your vacation. Like, especially because I had no idea that I was going to become an essential worker. Like, who would have ever thought a grocery store worker could become an essential worker? I don't even think McDonald's was prepared for whatever was coming at them, which is hilarious. Like, McDonald's honestly became more popular from, what I've noticed because of the pandemic. Now McDonald's employees are considered essential workers. And I'm just like, I just don't understand. The whole time I was down there, everything was normal. The whole time I was at the Crystal Palace, it was, very enjoyable. The characters came. We did the whole normal meet and greet thing. The characters weren't afraid to get close or anything. It was so nice walking around Disney. There was no face masks. You could actually stand in a physical line. They were doing the whole cram as close together as possible. Do not leave any gaps, blah, blah, blah. They were utilizing the stretching room at the Haunted Mansion. Mainly referring to the Haunted Mansion, which they're notorious for trying to cram every nook and cranny. And the parks were open normal hours, and Universal, everything was pretty much the same. There was no virtual lines of any kind except for the normal ones. And, nothing was, doing badly at the time. I went in a main event on the last day of the month, and it was a 2-hour wait just to bowl. I was, appalled. I was like, I cannot believe it. And not to mention, there was no laser tag. It was not like the main event I live near at all, which is out in Cincinnati, by the way. That's a long ways out. You're looking at almost an hour. So that just shows I don't live that close to it, but I live close enough that it makes it worth it. So, that trip ended up becoming a bust. But hey, at least I did the whole Disney Skyliner thing on the Saturday, so that's a good thing. Oh, I know I'm hearing something this time. But I can't tell for sure. I'm still getting used to this new place, so I keep hearing strange noises and all that fun stuff. So I'm just like, what was that? Fun times, And I know that none of these guys, except for my brother, are used to my YouTubing, so they're gonna be like, so if they did happen to walk at me, they'd be like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm doing YouTube. Oh, I thought you were talking to yourself. No. I'm very used to talking to a camera. Oh, here comes the fun part. So, when church was, doing the whole normal, thing, which was basically for us, we would do a bunch of songs, and we were actually allowed to sit close together. We would try to cram as many people in a pew as possible, and we actually had a choir, which, choirs stand pretty close together, people in the choir. And basically, once the pandemic happened, my church has spent more money than ever. Like, my music pastor even admitted the pandemic has cost him more money than he has ever spent in his life on the church. And I really strongly believe this pandemic has cost a lot of money to a lot of places. And another thing that made me sad, when I went to Fuddruckers, back to the Florida trip, that is, when I went to Fuddruckers on one of my last days in Florida, I saw the sign for sweet tomatoes. Little did I realize that would be the last time I would see a sweet tomatoes in existence. Honestly, if my friends and I knew about this at the time, like if we known Sweet Tomatoes was going to go out of business, we would have just gone to Sweet Tomatoes that night. But nobody knew, and you can guarantee Sweet Tomatoes didn't know at the time. But if they had known, you would think they would be advertising like crazy, trying to get people to commit. We're going out of business soon. Just saying, the pandemic's going to shut us down. But guess what? They didn't know. And because the fact that, Sweet Tomatoes is only in Florida, basically, that was like the last time I saw it. And that's the Sweet Tomatoes I know the best because I used to go out that direction all the time. That's the Fuddruckers. I would go to the one by Disney Springs. My mom has gone to that Sweet Tomatoes many times after teacher convention, so it was a staple of theirs. It was, well, maybe not a staple, but it was a tradition. They would go to Sweet Tomatoes after every teacher convention that was at in Orlando, if that says anything. So, I was honestly heartbroken when I found out that Sweet Tomatoes went out of business. But anyway, back to the whole church thing. So, how churches, have all that stuff set up. So, once the pandemic hit, my music pastor basically has spent thousands of dollars to get all these expensive lights, expensive bright lights to be specific. And then he had to get a live streaming technology going. We basically had to get rid of the choir altogether. Even the organist is not going to be around anytime soon. The pianist is not going to be around anytime soon. I haven't seen a good chunk of the church in months. There's some people from the church I have seen lately, but that's about it. Like, it wasn't even until May that I started seeing people that I used to see all the time, and that's just not even everybody. I would say I'm seeing about 75% of my normal congregation. The other 25% I haven't seen pretty much since February or so, which is really sad, and for at least 3 months, every other Sunday, I got a chance to go and do the video at my church. I had to keep it off of social media after I learned the hard way that my Facebook friends were giving me attitude for doing what I was required to do, which was to go down and run the video. And if it wasn't me, it was someone else. I was like, you know what? You can't tell me not to do this. It's, my decision. I know you're like, oh, I'm worried about your health and safety. You really think I'm worried about going to a building where there's only me, my dad, or another friend, the pastor, the music pastor, the drummer, and a few other people? There was literally about 10 or less of us every single week. We were following government orders. It's not like we were intentionally breaking the law, and that was it. And pretty much everything we did was right there. Everybody else had to sit on their couches and watch it from their TVs, or lay in bed and watch it on their TV, or watch it from their tablet or whatever. I mean, it was a very tough time. And this lasted for about 3 months. And I don't think anybody's ever going to forget that. The music, I can tell you right now, the pastor, not the music pastor, but the pastor had the hardest time because his only audience was a camera. Could you imagine being a pastor and walking around a building where you're used to seeing people and all you had to talk to was a camera and the same 9 people every single week? I mean, yeah, it changed out every other week. And this was, and for some people like my dad, who was stuck at home for 3 months long because your job laid you off, this was the only type of social interaction you ever got. Other than the annoying little 6-year-old girl that we had to babysit 3 days a week. But that was it. And I was the fortunate one. I kept my full-time job. I kept my full-time hours the whole time. But at the same time, it was tough because literally everybody was there because nobody had anything to do. Nobody had anywhere to go. Nobody had a job. And people were wasting all their money on groceries. What else did you have to do, And the reason why this move is slightly emotionally challenging on me is because of the fact that for 3 months long, I used to come home and there was people waiting around doing absolutely nothing. I had people to come home to that had nowhere to go. If this pandemic never happened, I probably wouldn't have been so emotionally hurt by the move because of the fact that it would just been the normal. I get up in the morning, I go to work, I come home, people are home from work, we have our dinner, we go to bed, and we do it all over again. But for 3 months, there was a lot of time when either I got to be home and I would just spend it with my parents who were stuck at home, or my brother who was stuck at home, and we would just do our best to keep ourselves busy. My parents used to go out on drives just to keep themselves busy because they had nothing else better to do. And my mom would try her best to find whatever means necessary to, keep herself busy, even if it meant like cleaning, doing excessive cleaning. I even asked her, "Hey, could you do this? Could you do that?" For me, even if it was a bit of an inconvenience, and she didn't even care because that's how bored she was. And, last but not least, I'm kind of emotionally scarred by this move because of the fact that, and I only say kind of because of the fact that, these were 2 people, I should say, that I lived with for 25 years. And, after all these years, we split apart, and they went their own way, and I went my own way. And yes, I made the decision on my own to do this, but, it was tough. Obviously, I have not covered everything as far as this pandemic goes. I mean, just looking at all the people that lost their jobs, the government has been forced to step in. Look at all the money the government's spending. Andy Beshear, when he did reopen the state of Kentucky, he's basically been forced to make the rules or the laws and regulations tougher and tougher every single week, because he knows that if he were to let things just slide, we would be right back to where we start now. We obviously can't afford to go back to where we were in the spring. There's no way, especially as the temperature is about to drop again up here. So, all I can do is pray and hope that God will pull us through this, and that things will get better. I personally don't believe that the face masks, are that much of a protection. I personally believe that It is nothing but a political scam. But I will tell you guys this, though. It is not the mark of the beast. And, if, the government says we have to, all you can do is just comply. I mean, what is there to lose? You're actually better off complying than arguing, because if you argue on this one, I mean, what is it going to get you? And I know there's going to be a point in time when there's going to be the mark of the beast, which is the number 666 that the government's going to require to have tattooed on your left or right arm for forms of payment. And at that point, then we have to be strong and stand up for what's right. This is a sign for that, but this is not, exactly the same thing either. And the reason why, I'm willing to comply with this thing is because what the government is doing is not biblically wrong, but at the same time, it's not morally right either. The Bible doesn't say anywhere how this is wrong. Not that I'm aware of. In fact, a lot of, churches are also complying as well. The reason why the mark of the beast is worse is because of the fact that it's the one thing that the Bible is, been prophesying for many centuries, or maybe even millennia, or for the past few millenniums. I cannot talk. And, it's warning us that this is something the government is trying to do, the mark of the beast, that is, to basically force us all to do a whole one world payment. That's basically what the mark of the beast is. It's a one world payment. We're going to get to that point. The face masks are definitely a sign, but the face masks are more of a health and safety thing. Now, I don't know when a lot of places are going to stop requiring it, and when the government's finally going to realize that they just can't keep enforcing something like this. But, unless, I'm not mistaken, the Bible has nothing against it. And, hey, I would be willing to do a discussion sometime on whether or not the face masks are going against the Bible. But based on my general knowledge, they are not. And I'm sure there's going to be a few people in the comment section that would want me to talk more about that. So, tell you what, guys, sometime I would like to do a discussion for you guys on whether the face masks are going against God's word or not. So, until then, I'm going to head over to Bible study. I'm probably a little behind now because I rambled on so much, and now we're looking at a 40-minute video. And what's funny about this whole pandemic is the whole fact that we went from basically living in a world where nobody could get a hold of anything because everybody was living in fear that they were going to be able to come out of their homes, and because they were so worried about getting sick, to basically a world where you can't go anywhere without finding a place that requires the stupid face mask. I know, I don't get it either. But that's basically the world we're living in right now, and it is what it is. And you're going to find that many, many jobs are going to require it. Even Answers in Genesis is requiring it, and they're a Christian organization. So if Christians are requiring it, then that it's not completely wrong. But the fact that the mark of the beast says something. But as I said, I'm willing to do a biblical discussion on that for you guys. Until then, I will see you guys in the next vlog. And always remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Have a great day. Peace out.